Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Benchwarmer Sports podcast. I'm Raffi, joined by Davian. As always, Davian, it is finally the most wonderful time of the year. We are
Yes.
approaching, and we're actually in the midst of college basketball, the glorious conference tournaments. Those are happening right now, underway. Some of the bigger tournaments, we're going to break those down and give our predictions shortly. Those are about to get underway, but we started to see some teams pick up some bids. Shout out Lipscomb. Shout out Drake. No offense to Kendrick Lamar. We're talking about the school, not the rapper. But teams are starting to pick up bids. We're getting closer and closer to the bracket being revealed, which will be revealed next week. You better bet that we're going to be doing our March Madness predictions as well as for that. But Davian, before we get into it, because I've already stressed this enough, I'm so happy that we have made it here. We all know that I've been waiting for this day, and the day has come. Davian, how are you? Before we break down some of these conference tournament
I mean,
brackets.
Rafi, like you said, this is the most wonderful time of the year. Conference tournaments this week, my birthday next week, and the start of the official March Madness. There's nothing more that a man can, or anybody can be excited for at this point in time. But, Rafi, how are you doing?
I mean, if you couldn't tell already, I am very excited to go through all these conference tournaments. We have, as I'm scrolling through, I believe 9 conferences that we're going to be giving our championship predictions for, our
Yeah, it's a
winner
lot.
champion predictions for. So we might as well just get right into it. So overall, just to get into each conference real quick. So we'll be talking about the
Yep.
American today, the ACC, the Big 12, the Big East, the Big 10, Ivy, Mountain West, SEC, and West Coast conferences. Davian, let's just hop into the first one. We're going to be going through these alphabetical order. First, we'll start off with the American. Davian, I'll give you the floor. Who do you have winning the American Conference Tournament?
I have Memphis. I think they've dominated this entire season. They've dominated the conference, just the conference in general. They have, according to TeamRankings.com, a 50%, almost a 50% chance to win their conference. I think they're the and I think they're going to be the champions of this American tournament. But again, you can't count out. It's March, so anything can happen. I feel like you really can't count out a team like Florida Atlantic FAU, which in the past have has gone on some historic runs. So
100%. And then you also have North Texas as well in that conference
yep,
too,
that too.
which has been one of the best defensive scoring defenses in the country, only allowing 59.3 points per game, which is third best in D1. So there's some good schools in the American Athletic Conference. I had Memphis as well. They actually have some pretty impressive wins when I was looking through their schedule in their non-conference. They beat Missouri, they beat MSU, and they beat Clemson as well. MSU being the most notable, as MSU is currently fighting for to potentially get on the one line. So what Penny Hardaway has done for this Memphis program, especially where it was last year, where they really underwhelmed and under exceeded expectations. Memphis has had a great year so far, and I'm not I'm not too surprised that they have a 50% chance of winning this conference tournament because they've just been that good this year. PJ Haggerty likely going to win the AAC Player of the Year. He's been amazing this season. 21.3 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.8 steals. He's been incredible, and yeah, I Memphis won by 4 points when they faced off in early January, but this Memphis team has just been unbelievable. They've been on a great streak of late. So yeah, I agree with Memphis winning. Let's move on to the conference that I get confused often with the American Athletic Conference, and that's because AAC and ACC are very, very similar. And when I talk too fast, which I normally do, I tend to get the two mixed up. But let's get into the American Coastal Conference, which now has Stanford and Cal and teams on the West Coast, but that is for another day. ACC, I'll just get right into it. I assume we would have the same team. I have Duke beating Clemson
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
conference tournament prediction. Duke has been by far the best team in the ACC. I'd say if I had to do tiers, I'd say Duke is on a tiered zone. You go down a little bit, then you have your Clemson and Louisville, then you go down a little bit, and then you start to those other schools tend to filter down. Aside from Clemson and Louisville, I really don't think any of these other schools really will challenge Duke. Duke played pretty close versus North Carolina in a rivalry game in UNC yesterday as we're recording this video on Sunday, but they wound up pulling away. Cooper Flag, likely the first overall pick at this upcoming NBA draft. He's been incredible, and he and Janai Broom have really been facing off for who's going to win the Best Player of the Year award for college basketball. I have Clemson. I think that they've been pretty solid as a whole this year. I like them a little bit more than Louisville, especially how they've been playing late. I think you can pick either one of those two, but to me, Duke is just in their own tier. Even with the ACC's funkiness over the past couple of years, I feel like it hasn't gone as chalk as most tournaments, most conference tournaments, but I just think Duke is well and away the best school in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, Rafi, I feel like you summarized it perfectly. I mean, this Duke team has just been unstoppable, I feel like, all year long. Yes, they've had their losses here and there. I mean, yes, they have had close games amongst, against this ACC competition as well. And this ACT, I mean, it's very good. I mean, you have a lot of really good teams. Like, yes, we talked about a tier system, but even if you compare that tier system towards other conferences, I think they're a very strong conference, especially this year based off the performance of these teams. But I don't feel like we need to talk about that anymore. So Rafi, I guess we are moving on now to the Big 12, correct?
Yep, we are getting to the Big 12 now.
All right, sick. So Big 12, I feel like it happens every year, and I feel like every year people are like, all right, like, yeah, they're probably going to win it, but I hope it's not because, I mean, it is a Big 12, a lot of competitive teams out here, but I have Houston winning it all.
Yeah, I have Houston as well. I mean, I have Houston being Texas Tech. Houston, as you said, best team in the country, first scoring defense, only allowing 58 points per game, seventh in turnover margin. The only team that has beaten or really challenged Houston this year in Big 12 play really has been Texas Tech. Texas Tech beat Houston earlier in the month in February, or actually in February, rather. So just over a month ago, February 1st, they beat them by 1 point, 82-81. And then Houston wound up beating Texas Tech a few weeks ago, 69-61. Funny enough, both of those wins were on the road for their respective teams, which was very interesting. I think the big thing for Texas Tech, if they were to beat Houston, is the 3 point game. Texas Tech shot 30% when they beat Houston 82-81 in the first game, but they only shot 20%, 6 from 30 from the three
Yeah, you can't
in
win
that
in
second
like
game.
that. Yeah.
So Texas Tech is a team that shoots a lot of threes, and if they get hot and get going, they can definitely take on Houston and wind up beating them. I think that's certainly possible, but on most nights, I'm going to wind up taking Houston. I think Arizona is also a team to look out for. They've been pretty good down the stretch, but I just think Houston plays very, very controlled game. They really lock it down defensively, and I think they can really limit Texas Tech's offensive ability. It's also funny enough too. Houston's kind of the absolute opposite. Although they have a really high 3 point shooting percentage, they're actually 287th in attempted threes per game. The three ball is just not their game, but if they can nail a couple threes per night, I think Houston is definitely on the one line. It could potentially make a lot of noise if they can get some more threes to start falling. Because honestly, maybe they should start shooting it more with the fact that they have been shooting pretty well for the most part this season, even with a low volume. Davian, let's hop over now to the Big East. I wonder if we have the
Oh,
same team. I
I
have
don't think
St.
we do, right?
John's. Do you
Nah,
not have
gotta
St.
disagree. I
John's?
got UConn. No, I mean, like, look, I
Wow.
love St. John's. I love what Rick Pitino's been putting up there. But this UConn team, they're just different in March, Rafi. I mean, I like whatever. Like, I don't know what happens to Dan Hurley, but he just becomes an absolute monster in March, just dominating team after team. Throughout the bracket, throughout the tournaments. I have to, especially the St. John's team that's never really felt the lights of kind of the conference of March. I feel that like I know that there's a big difference I think that people don't recognize between the conference tournaments and like the March Madness, like the actual bracket, right? Like the round of 64 when you're actually going dancing. But in any case, I still feel like the certain spotlight that the tournament puts it will have an effect on the players. And I feel like this UConn team has been in these lights before, and I think that they're going to really be able to pull it through.
Yeah, it's hard to pick against Dan Hurley, as you mentioned, especially I think back to 2 years ago where UConn really struggled in the month of January and led a lot of people like myself to really count them out in March. And then they proved everyone wrong going from a 4 seed all the way to national champions. And we saw last year where they just rolled through everyone on their way to back-to-back titles. I have UConn losing to St. John's. The big thing for me, and the big reason why I wound up picking St. John's, aside from the fact that they've been fantastic this year, Rick Pitino finally gets another shot, and man, for the school that took a shot on them, St. John's, they've really been reaping the rewards of that. And that's just the fact that, Davian, do you know where St. John's plays their home games?
Madison Square Garden.
And you know where the Big East tournament is?
Madison Square Garden.
Exactly. I just think the home crowd, I just think
Yeah,
they're going to
I
come out in
guess.
droves.
I
And
guess.
I honestly would lean UConn potentially if this was in another place, but St. John's is playing on their home court. They're going to be playing
Yeah.
essentially a bunch of home games at their tournament. Yes, Connecticut is pretty close in proximity to New York
I mean,
City,
they
but
travel well
David,
too, though.
they
I
travel
don't know.
well, but I'm just saying you have the home environment with St. John's, and I just think St. John's is going to be able to carry that. Every
Also,
game is essentially going to be a home
also,
game for
fun
them.
fact: UConn is on spring break next week, so I think that could play a factor in terms of how many people show up for the tournament.
Very well
Also,
could. I
yeah,
Yeah.
I think also kind of like the pathway that St. John's has is a bit harder than what UConn's going to go through. I feel because right they have to go through either Butler, or Providence, then either Marquette or Xavier to get to the final, while UConn has to go through Villanova or Seton Hall, both kind of teams that are very mediocre, and then possibly Creighton or DePaul or Georgetown. Probably gonna be Creighton because they are a very good team, but I feel like UConn's path also to the finals is a bit easier, and especially because these games are back to back to back. Like it's 3 days, one two, it's 4 days of games, right? So I feel like that also has to play a factor. I mean, I will say just for the viewers, first off, I've never really predicted the conference tournament winners in such detail. It's always been like, oh yeah, well, like CBS is saying it's going to be St. John's, so it's St. John's. This is the first every year where I'm trying to like I'm kind of just putting in together factors I know from other leagues and how it applies as well. I can very well comment on the Ivy League, which we will get to shortly. But yeah, Rafi, that's why I'm backing UConn. I feel like Dan Hurley's just a different beast, but I can like it will not surprise me in any way if St. John's ends up winning, and I feel like that's what most people expect. So
Yeah, I really think they can play either way too. If it's an upper tempo game, I think St. John's will do well, and if it's a solid defensive game going back and forth, I think St. John's can make some noise. RJ Lewis has been great this year as well for St. John's. Just wanted to shout him out. So you are right. I will give you the credit too. When you look at St. John's side of the bracket, Marquette just recently beat St. John's, I believe, if I remember correctly. That was, or
yeah,
no,
correct.
St. John's just beat Marquette. That was a buzzer beater
Yeah,
at Marquette. Never mind. But point is, Marquette plays St. John's very, very close, even though it's at Marquette. And then Xavier's won 7 straight. So Xavier is
yeah,
also not a team to be taking,
can't write them
just
off.
saying, oh, we can walk in here and handle business. We don't need to go 100%. Xavier hasn't really been anyone impressive those last 7 games, but when you're winning 7 straight, regardless, you're going to be feeling it. You're going to have some momentum. So Xavier's another school to look out for. Creighton's the big school where I've been high on them in years past. I was between them and Tennessee coming out of, I believe, the East quadrant last year in my bracket. Creighton largely dependent on Cockrunner. If a team can shut him down, that kind of cuts off the lifeline of Creighton. So Creighton kind of concerns me just because it's primarily driven by one player. But yeah, I think I can't agree with the point that St. John's does have a little bit more of a difficult path than UConn does, but we'll see what happens. I do have St. John's still being UConn. I will hold on that. Let's move over to the Big Ten. Big Ten, Davian, I want to hear your thoughts first because this is. We'll get into the SEC, which is a
Oh
whole
boy.
mosh posh, and that's just impossible to predict. But the Big Ten too, I feel like there's Michigan State who's a
Yeah.
little ahead, and then you have your Illinois, your Maryland, your Michigan. UCLA's been pretty good
Oh,
down the stretch. I'm sure I'm forgetting someone else. Wisconsin has been really good too.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
a
yeah. You're right,
bunch of schools
Rafi.
all really close together. If I didn't say Purdue already,
Oh
Purdue as well, you
no,
can throw into that mix.
Rafi, don't make me
So
do
it's
this.
Michigan State, but like right below them, there's just a ton of schools in that middle section who can all make some noise come March.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, Rafi. Look, I've been following. I mean, of all the out besides the Ivy League, I feel like this is the conference I've been following the most, and it's like you can't. I don't really know who to say. I mean, Michigan State is such a good team, but this Maryland team with Derek Queen has just been unstoppable. And so, like, it's and they go on really. I feel like this team is like they go on big stretches of wins, and they are ranked second for a reason at the end of the day. You also, I feel like you can't count out the other teams in there like Rutgers. With Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, the probably the 2-3 pick, number 2, number 3 pick in the NBA lottery. Um, that also they could also play a role into how well they could also play. They could do some damage out here. But if I had to pick a winner, Rafi, I'm picking Maryland. I feel like this team is very well
Wow.
poised together. I feel that this is a team that has proven that they could win. They lost to Michigan State by a buzzer beater, which was insane, half court shot, right? So I feel like they can beat Michigan State. And so I'm gonna have to go Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland's played really close the past couple games. They beat Penn State, but aside from that, they played, as you mentioned, they lost by 3 to Michigan State a week ago. They also lost to Michigan by 6 in a very close game. Yeah, Maryland's
Yeah,
been pretty good down the stretch. I don't want to sound like this because it is the school that I did happen to go to, but Illinois, I think Illinois is an enigma because they're arguably the most boom or bust school in all of Division One NCAA basketball.
yeah,
They have the potential to be a fantastic team that can go on a Final Four type of run, but then they also, when they're off, get blown out by Duke, where they lost. I believe it was like 110-76 or something. It was the UConn Illinois Elite Eight, I believe, Elite Eight matchup from last year, just all over again, where Duke just had their way with Illinois in front of everyone at MSG.
yeah,
Since getting blown out by Duke, though, they beat Iowa, Michigan, and Purdue, which are all three pretty solid schools. Michigan and Purdue, most notably. Iowa's also been solid this year, although I wouldn't put them in the same tier in the schools that I listed earlier.
agreed.
And I'm gonna bet on Illinois catching some fire and going on a deep run in this Big Ten tournament, and we'll see what happens. I think when they're playing as a unit and playing really solid and playing together, and they have momentum, I think this is one of the top schools in the country. I know it's crazy to say they aren't going to be on the 1 line, they aren't going to be fighting for the 2 line, but if you're looking for that 4 or 5 seed that could potentially go on a deep run, I think Illinois has been a popular pick by a lot of people as, you know what, if I'm trying to pick not a 1 seed to come out of the, at least to the Elite Eight, maybe to the Final Four, Illinois is a popular pick. And again, they did get blown out by Duke. I think for me personally, my thoughts on Illinois going to March Madness is largely going to be based upon how this Big Ten tournament goes for them. If they can go on a deep run, I might pick them going pretty deep into March Madness. If they wind up really struggling and get out in the first, second day of their respective games, then I'm feeling a little more cautious about Illinois. But even as the 6 seed in the Big Ten tournament, I feel like they're a team that can certainly make some noise. I do like their side of the bracket a lot. So I haven't winded up playing against MSU. It's hard to pick against Tom Izzo and March. Tom Izzo and March is, everyone knows, is a hot commodity. Everyone knows not to pick against Tom Izzo and March, especially when Michigan State's been as dynamic as they've been this year. They're fourth on fast break points. They're third in rebounds. Their scoring defense is top 50 in the country. But I think I'm going to pause my Tom Izzo hype for now, and we'll see if I wind up pushing that into my March Madness predictions, depending on how this tournament goes for them. Because I think Michigan State very well could be in the Final Four. I think they're one of the best schools in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have much more to add. You definitely have a more in-depth analysis than I do, but yeah. Again, I think I'm gonna still take this Maryland team. I think that they could. I think Maryland is a team that I could see in the Final Four as well.
Yeah, I've Illinois is, according to Jerry Palm's bracketology, is actually on the 7 line too, which is like if they have a good tournament, they could potentially get up to the 6 and 5. But I'm looking
Yeah,
at some of these other teams in the area. Illinois versus Arizona, I think would be close. They're on the 6 line. Memphis, Illinois, I think would be close. Illinois over a team like Kansas. I don't know how Kansas is on the 7 line. Honestly, they fell off completely
yeah,
from
they really
being
have.
the
Yeah,
best team, ranked the best team in the country to start the year, but all of a sudden are now somehow the 7 seed. I don't know how that happened. Speaking of also ridiculous things too, Indiana, which their coach was literally on the way out, is now the 10 seed, now marked as a 10 seed projected. They're 4 and
Yeah.
12 in quadrant one. They have no other losses outside quadrant one, but to be 4 and 12 and the way things have gone for Indiana, I'm actually very surprised that they're even in this tournament, especially on the 10 line. They've really turned it around
Yeah.
enough of late. But that's all I got really for the Big Ten, and we'll see what happens because, again, as I said, it's pretty close. All right, next up, the highlight of the podcast, the biggest tournament to half of this show. Let's get into the Ivy Conference tournament.
Yes,
Davian,
sir.
I'll hand it off to you first. I wonder who you're going to pick here, but I would love to hear your analysis and your thoughts on who you think is going to take home the Ivy Conference tournament trophy.
Yeah. Simple. Go Big Red. I'm picking Cornell. I'm gonna explain to you why. Yes, this Yale team has been unstoppable all year. They've defeated very good teams. They could qualify even if if they played more Q1 competition. I think they would have been able to qualify without really winning the tournament. But it's the Ivy League; they only give out one bid. So, um, so you might think like, all right, well then Yale is the winner. But no, why? Because Yale plays Princeton in the first round. I think that Princeton is gonna be able to defeat Yale. And because of that, I think that Cornell is going to play Princeton in the finals. Simple as that. I think also that Cornell has kept it close against Yale, so even if they do play Yale, they'll be able to beat them. I feel like Dartmouth, which is the fourth seed right now, you can write them off. I feel like Cornell can. Cornell has split the series against them this year, but I seriously think that Cornell can put things together. What they have a very solid squad, a new head coach. I think that they could really pull it off together and could see we I think we could honestly I think we will be seeing them dancing in March.
Go Bulldogs! I have Yale. I have Yale. They've been really good this year. This is one of the best years they've had in conference play, which is crazy. They recently tied the most wins in conference play in their program history. I always feel like Yale's kind of the boring pick, especially when you're predicting the Ivies, because it seems like almost every year it does tend to be Yale that comes out and takes that bid for the Ivies. I would love to see Cornell because I would love to see you on this podcast pick Cornell to beat whichever four seed they play against, and I'd love to see you get hyped about that. I just think Yale's the team to beat this year. And it's funny too because you see last year Brown almost wound up making it to March Madness. They were very close, and then they choked it at the end, which was just terrible to see. I want to say they played Princeton last year, if I remember correctly, in that
Yeah.
Ivy League championship. But anything can happen here. I feel like as much as I'm hyping up Yale, a lot of those schools are very close together in terms of where I'd consider them in the realm of college basketball. So upsets can certainly happen there. I think these teams are much closer than a lot of people imagine. Although I still think Yale will leak out the edge. Mountain West. Mountain West is very interesting because when you look at a lot of the bracketologies, a lot of the Mountain West teams are very close. They're on a fine line right now of if they are in or out. You have Utah State and New Mexico, which are projected 9 seeds. You have San Diego State, which is projected 11 seed. Boise State, another projected 11 seed, which is according to Jerry Palm or based on his predictions, he has Boise State as one of the last four in. But then you also have schools like Colorado State too that could potentially steal a bid. And you know what? I'm going to go with Colorado State. They've won 7 straight. They've been on a heater of late. And right now, I'm just going to ride with the momentum. I think they have nothing to lose right now. They I think they have a lot to lose right now because if they get bounced early, they're going to wind up just missing March Madness. So for this school, I think they have the most on the line. They're coming in with some swagger, some momentum after winning 7 straight. And you know what? I have Colorado State going through the Mountain West and stealing a bid. We always like to see some bid stealers. We always like to see a little bit of chaos. I'm going to hop on the Colorado State wagon here and pick them winning the Mountain West Championship.
Yeah, that's a great wagon to hop on, but I'm sorry, I'm picking New Mexico. I feel like this team has really been playing well, and that's why they are the number one seed, and that's why I think they're going to win it out. I think these games are going to be very close. I think that anything can happen. I can easily see Colorado State winning it all, and getting going to steal a bid from somebody else. But as much as I want to be the fun guy here, I'm gonna have to go with New Mexico.
It's all good. We can have some fun picks. We can have some boring picks. You decide to go
Yep,
boring there. We can go fun for other ones. We can go boring for other ones. It's
we
just
can
how
go
it
for.
is. Now, let's get into probably the most fun conference out of all the conference tournaments this year, and
Oh,
that's the
jeez,
SEC.
Raffi.
The SEC currently has 13 projected teams to make the tournament this year, March Madness, which is ridiculous. It's an NCAA record. We've never seen that before. Could potentially even go to 14, depending if Texas does have a good run. Albeit, if Texas has a good run, that might mean that a team like Oklahoma goes from just in to just out. So, likely 13 schools will get into March Madness, albeit there could be some bid stealers. So, we'll see. But it's just been incredibly competitive in the SEC this year. Davian, I'll give you the first crack at it. Who do you have winning the SEC Conference Championship Tournament?
Oh, Raffi, you wanted a fun pick. And my fun pick is horns down. Go Aggies.
No.
I have the Aggies winning it all.
Okay.
Look, I think that look, at the end of the day, this is an Aggies team that just beat Auburn. Yes, this is an Auburn team that has back to back losses to Texas A&M and Bama. But there's a reason why Auburn was ranked number one throughout the year. They are one of the best teams in basketball, and that's why I will not be surprised if Auburn wins this tournament either. But I think what Texas A&M has going into this conference tournament is momentum. And again, they were playing very, very well throughout the season until think I think they dropped like 4 games in a row. Um,
Yeah, they had a rough stretch
Two SEC
mid-year.
competition. It was like they dropped to Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Florida, right? All games that they should have won given their ranking, but they just didn't. That's why I know people are counting them out, but go Aggies.
It's incredible, the SEC this year. I'm looking just right now. Again, I have Jerry Palm's bracketology, which is, I get why people like Joe Lenardi. I like his brackets too. Honestly, I like all bracketologies. But Jerry Palm, he's my guy. Auburn and Florida are currently listed as projected 1 seeds. Alabama and Tennessee and Texas A&M are projected 2 seeds. That's seven of. Sorry. Ooh, whoa. Cannot do math. That's over half of the top 2 seeds that are SEC schools, which again is just absolutely ridiculous. I, even with Auburn losing back-to-back games, I still have Auburn winning over Florida. I really like Florida this year. I have Auburn over Florida, and for those saying, "Oh, Auburn shouldn't be the number one overall school in the country. They should not have the overall 1 seed." Auburn has 16 quad one wins. The next most quad one wins is Alabama and Michigan State, both with 11. Auburn has 5 more quad one wins, and they have the same amount of quad one losses as Michigan State, and they have 3 less losses than Alabama, quad one wise. This is all with the second most difficult schedule in all of college basketball this year. This team, this school has been unbelievable this year, and I just can't imagine why any. Like, I get it, they've lost back to back games. I get it, and if they struggle in the SEC tournament, then I think you can make the argument if they lose earlier than expected. Okay, maybe they're not the overall 1 seed, but at this point in time, even with back to back losses, I still think Auburn's the best team in the country, and I still think they should be the overall 1 seed pending how they do in the SEC tournament. I have Auburn over Florida. I like Florida a lot. They are really, really good at rebounding. Florida is one of the best rebounding schools in the country, but Janai Broom, he's been a dog, as some might say, and he's just been amazing. It's him and Cooper Flag, 1 and 2 for who's going to be the college basketball men's player of the year. And I think Broom is better this year, but when I'm looking at NBA scouting, I think Cooper Flag is certainly going to be the first overall pick in the NBA draft. So, although I like Broom for best player of the year, I like Cooper Flag as a prospect much more. But I have Auburn being Florida TLDR.
Yeah, I agree with your prospect analysis, and we'll definitely talk about the NBA draft as we get closer to it. Since there are a lot of big names, I really feel like coming out of college this year. But no, I just can't. Like again, I can see Auburn. I mentioned it before, but go Aggies.
All right, let's close this show off with the West Coast Conference.
Let's
I have
do
St.
it.
Mary's versus Gonzaga. I've Gonzaga winning. They've been not Gonzaga like this year. They've been primarily, both schools are on the 8-9 line. I think they're both still going to wind up getting in unless one of them gets bounced in their first matchup in the West Coast Conference tournament. But I have Gonzaga. St. Mary's has beaten Gonzaga twice this year, which is pretty crazy. You normally don't see St. Mary's beating Gonzaga. Normally they split or Gonzaga takes both of them. But I think it's just very hard to beat someone 3 times. So I'm going to go third time's a charm for Gonzaga. I have Gonzaga over St. Mary's for the West Coast Conference Championship.
Um, Look, I know you said you can't beat a team 3 times, but this is the St. Mary's team that's been on a roll for a while throughout this season. And again, like you said, this is a Gonzaga team that's been very, very lackluster. And I think that's why St. Mary's makes its mark this go around and they win the West Coast Conference. Also, a new
We will
coach, and
certainly.
the new coach may or may not be from Cornell, and they may or may not have a player that also used to play for Cornell and transferred over there.
Well, it's certainly likely not because of any of those reasons. But that will do it. We'll hold off on any more conference tournament predictions. There's so many conferences, so we could have really had a really long show,
We
but we
could have had a
decided to
very
go
long
for some of
podcast.
the top ones just so we could provide a little bit more analysis because I don't know how much analysis we would have been able to give the ASUN Conference Championship, where
Yeah,
some of the other ones, the Missouri Valley is another one that comes to mind. So we hope you enjoyed this edition. Let us know who you guys think is going to win some of these respective conference tournaments. March Madness is just around the corner, just under a week away. We will have a bracket, which will be so much fun. We're here to break it down, so we're going to have a lot of fun once that comes out. For Davian, I'm Raffi. We hope you enjoyed this edition of the Benchwarmer Sports podcast. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, tell all your friends, have a good one, and enjoy conference tournament week.
peace.